Hello and welcome to Hobby Electronics, and I'm Nick, and on this episode I'll be showing you how to make a 360 degree time-lapse camera rig. So let's get to it.
Okay, for this project you'll be needing 3 thin MDF discs, a geared motor, a sheet of MDF that's 5mm thick, 8 small aluminium brackets, a short length of aluminium pipe which is approximately 10mm in diameter, an Arduino, a potentiometer cap, an Arduino prototyping shield, some header pins. These pins have been specifically designed for the Arduino prototyping shield. A 9V power supply with appropriate jack, an NPN Darlington transistor, 3 LEDs, a 10k ohm potentiometer, some hookup wire, 3 330 ohm resistors, and 2 spade connectors. Okay, so let's begin by finding the center of all 3 MDF discs. I'm doing this by marking 4 separate lines around the outside of the disc, all of the same length. Then mark the center of these lines. Then on those center marks we need to draw a line that's perpendicular to the lines that we marked around the outside of the circle. This should give us a center point of the circle. Then onto the MDF sheet, mark out 4 pieces, and each of them with the dimensions of 220mm by 120mm. Once all 4 have been marked out, you can then cut them to size. And then sand down the rough edges. These 4 pieces will form the base of the rig. On one of the pieces, mark roughly halfway down on both sides, and then connect both those marks. On this line we'll mark out the positions for a potentiometer and the 3 indicator LEDs, and then drill all 4 holes with the appropriate drill bits. As I am using 5mm LEDs, I drilled the holes to be 5mm in diameter. Then using the aluminium brackets and a small amount of glue 4 of the brackets onto 2 of the wooden pieces. Once dried we can then glue these 2 pieces onto the remaining 2 pieces of MDF. And then complete the base by gluing the remaining 2 halves together. Whilst that's drying, remove the roll pin from the geared motor. Then using some of the aluminium pipe, drill a hole through one end the same diameter as the roll pin. As you can see with the aluminium pipe over the shaft of the motor, we can still put the roll pin back in place. Now cut the aluminium pipe down to roughly 50mm in length. Now we can drill a hole through the center of 2 of the MDF discs using a small diameter drill bit. Then using a drill bit of the same diameter as the pipe, re-drill both of those holes. Now we have 2 of the discs with a hole large enough to fit the pipe through, and 1 remaining disc without any holes drilled in it. To be able to use your tripod with this rig, first place your tripod on the top disc, and trace around the 3 feet. This should leave us with the 3 feet marked on the top disc. First begin by drilling a pilot hole through each of them. Then go back with the much larger drill bit to finish the holes off. This will allow us to prevent the tripod from moving when using the device. Now we can glue all 3 discs together. Now using a hole saw we can cut out a spacer disc. Then use a drill bit with the same diameter as the aluminium pipe to enlarge the hole. Then using some more glue, fasten the spacer to the bottom of the stack of discs. After adding some more glue, we can then insert our short length of aluminium pipe. Whilst that's drying, we can cut out a top to fit on top of the box. Then find the center point of the top plate. We can then mark and drill the screw holes to mount the motor. Then finally drill out the center hole. Then using some more of the aluminium rod, cut out 4 short spacers. We can then position them over the bolts and mount the motor. Then using the remaining 4 aluminium brackets, we can then glue the top in place. Next, solder the header pins into the prototyping shield. And then insert the Darlington transistor. I'll be connecting the base of the transistor to digital pin 6 on the Arduino, then the emitter of the transistor to ground, and lastly I'll be connecting the collector of the transistor to the motor, then to the 9-volt power supply. After soldering the transistor in place, trim and bend over the collector and base leads, as we'll be needing to solder to these later. Then cut a short length of wire off, and solder this to the center pin on the transistor. Then solder the other wire to a vacant pad. Then cut another short length of wire, and solder one end of it to the remaining bent over transistor leg, and the other end to digital pin 6. It should then look something like this. Next we need to cut off the excess shaft from the potentiometer so it can fit on the cap. Then cut 3 lengths of wire, roughly 20 cm long. Then solder one wire to each of the legs of the potentiometer. Then solder the wire coming from the center pin of the potentiometer to analog pin 0. Then solder the wire coming from the far right pin to the ground rail. And lastly the wire from the far left pin to the 5-volt rail. Okay, this is how we'll be connecting up our LEDs. We'll be connecting the positive side of the first LED to digital pin 5. Then the negative of that LED will be going to a 330 ohm resistor to ground. The second LED will be connected to digital pin 4. And the third LED will be connected to digital pin 3. Then cut 3 pairs of wires, and then solder one wire to the 330 ohm resistor, and then to the negative side of the LED, and the other wire to the positive side of the LED. Repeat this for all 3 LEDs. Now we can connect these up to the prototyping shield. First connect the positive of the first LED to digital pin 5, the second to digital pin 4, and the third to digital pin 3. Okay, so this is how the electronics looks so far. Now it's time to solder 2 wires coming from the jack of our 9-volt power supply, then connecting the ground wire to the ground rail on the prototyping shield, and then the positive wire to the motor's positive lead. Then hot glue the LEDs and potentiometer in place, and mount your Arduino to the inside of the enclosure. Then attach the potentiometer cap, and mount the power supply jack. Then attach your prototyping shield to your Arduino. Then upload the provided code to your Arduino. Lastly, connect the 2 spade connectors to the motor leads. Then attach them to the motor. Okay, so now I have the rig set up and my camera on time-lapse mode. Let's give it a test.